Temple of Apollo in the city of Side. I missed what I bought this trip for. I bought it for the ruins. But before the trip I got sick, and besides, I wore the wrong shoes, which probably saved me. You could walk through the ruins for 30 minutes with a guide, or you could take a ride on a train. I chose the latter and skipped the entire story. After which, the guide suggested we walk to the Temple of Apollo ourselves, which was extremely problematic in my shoes. I walked to the temple, and for good reason. It is just beginning to be restored, and the way it was built is clearly visible. The columns of the temple were carved from marble. It is found everywhere in Turkey. The top of the columns was covered with marble chips and mortar, forming a kind of concrete, which is clearly visible. The bases of the columns resemble millstones. They were apparently sharpened like millstones. Square holes are visible in the columns and base. These parts were fastened in holes. Also, apparently, the holes were needed for turning columns. The fastenings, as I heard from other videos written by historians, were wooden, but I did not believe it because it was the Iron Age then. Therefore, I thought that they should be made of iron. And I was not mistaken. Other temples contained iron fastenings, and this was shown in videos and on the internet. Looking at the Temple of Apollo, it is clear that the bases of the columns were cast from marble chips. The columns were carved from a single piece of marble and covered with concrete made from stone chips. The flutes were clearly carved with tools. They were carved into the column and covered with marble concrete on top. This indicates the presence of machine technology in ancient times, because it is impossible to equally turn all the flutes on one column with such uniformity and accuracy. Apparently the square holes for fastening also served for attaching a column or part of a column to a rotating mechanism for turning, as well as for cutting out flutes. The upper blocks of the temple, near the roof itself, resemble a casting, since they are flat, and an ornament is cast on them, since it would be problematic to cut out like that. Parts of the ornament extend beyond the plane and form empty spaces between themselves and the block. This means that the block was cast from a prepared wax mold, which was coated with something temperature resistant. The wax was melted out and filled with lithium marble. These blocks, which lie on top of the columns, have a middle gutter and resemble a block of concrete, which suggests that they are cast. The ruins of the Byzantine era contain columns made of solid material, stone, which casts doubt on their manufacture. But the ruins of the temple clearly and without a doubt speak of the carving of columns from a piece of marble, for marble is a heterogeneous material. I found information about the existence of lithium marble, containing 80% marble chips and 20% polyester resins. Sculptures are cast from it. They look plastic and shine with those resins. These resins do not require high temperatures to melt.
Каменная крошка, она с чем-то соединена, да? Мраморная крошка, а это мраморная, да, это без камня. Явно без камня.
The large brick blocks from which the wall was made may have been carved. The blocks near the roof are the same. They are not even, which means they may have been hollowed out. The square bases of the columns and the round bases of the columns were apparently cast. Since their shape is very even, and the structure of the stone inside is even, they look like concrete. It is possible that some of the millstones were turned, because the structure of the stone resembles a natural solid stone in pattern, but on others some kind of straight grooves are noticeable, which is more reminiscent of concrete. Perhaps they were created so that the columns had greater grip and did not move, but it is not clear why they are there.
Облицовка была из крошки, где сделана вот эта красота. Не, ну по-моему на каменной внутри, ничего не скажешь, нет. Не похоже на бетон. Похоже на камень. Вот камень.
The square bases are also marked with grooves in a circle, and apparently this suspicious groove was a guide for the correct placement of the column. All parts of the column were fastened with square iron fasteners. The question remains about carving the stone out of the rock. This also happened, but how and with what tools remains a mystery. It is very possible that they are copper and primitive using vibration. Experiments confirm this possibility, and leave similar traces on the stone. Vibration can easily cut and drill stone with a copper cylinder. And the pyramids were built by scientists, engineers and geometers, mathematicians, as well as hired workers, not slaves. This means that the ancients had good knowledge of mathematics, geometry and physics, at least the same mechanics. This is confirmed by the presence of technology among the Greeks. It is impossible to build masterpieces using muscle power alone, without knowledge of art, science and technology. The ancients even knew optics, and how a person sees columns from a distance. And they made them the right size to create the right effect, so that all the columns looked the same size. In addition, these temples were painted. They weren't white. The marble was brightly colored.
Это Греция. Это все Греция. Да. Камень. Вот, точно, да. Руины, да. Греция. Это да. Камень, камень, камень.
Marble is calcium carbonate. It decomposes at temperature into quicklime and carbon dioxide. There is an opinion that in ancient times they poured stone at high temperatures, which could have been obtained in an unknown way. This is unlikely to have happened. Rather, petroleum products, which melt at low temperatures, were added to the stone chips and castings were made.
С кладками вот этими, да. И это тоже более позднее явно. Да, это не от Аполлона, это позже. Это более поздние какие-то руины. Ну ладно, посмотрели. Посмотрели и хватит. А еще успеть домой, да, добежать. Что из каменоломня. Видимо, это не от Греции, это не греческое. Это то, из чего делали стены. Посмотри, это новое, рваный камень, но клееный. Да, рваный камень позднее эпохи. Да, остатки Греции.
The ancient world was very developed. It was not as primitive as we think. Technology was very developed there. Suffice it to recall the Antikythera mechanism, calendars, megaliths, Archimedes with his mirrors, and maps of Mars, Antarctica, the Roman cup changing its color depending on what is poured into it, water or wine. This raises suspicions about the presence of nanotechnology. In ancient Greece, the philosophy of atomists was created, claiming that the world consists of both particles, atoms, and emptiness. The Romans performed operations on the cornea of the eyes, which indicates very high technology and knowledge. The only question that arises is where the knowledge of that time and the records of those years disappeared. Megalithic structures are located exactly on geographic meridians at clear distances from each other, which suggests that the world communicated with each other very well. A similar general culture speaks to this. Perhaps the decline was associated with rising water levels. Most of the coastal cities were flooded, and many inhabited islands in the ocean were also flooded. The solution to these mysteries still awaits us in the future.
Видно, это крошка. Сюда посмотри. Это крошка, да. Вот там мраморная крошка. Тоже крошка. Мраморная крошка на растворе. Ничего. Что тут написано? Это крошка. А вот там, да, а там вулкан. Ладно.